I remember driving my children, who were, the world is opening back, and I'm driving them to school, and I'm making all these comments, and I realize I'm being really sarcastic right now. And I go, girls, has mommy got more sarcastic since the pandemic? And they both in unison went, no, Mom. So they both put the sarcasm right back at me. And I remember my sense of humor became very dark also when I was working in an inpatient site, because we just had to laugh about what we were dealing with on a daily basis. So we just went there. And if anybody else from the outside world were to come in and hear our conversations, they'd be like, are you really in the mental health field? Yes, this is how we cope. You're welcome, goodbye. Okay? There's also feelings of professional inadequacy. So we can become increasingly unsure of ourselves professionally. We may second guess ourselves. We may start to feel insecure about the things that we used to feel confident in performing. So we start to go into work and go, oh, did I do that right? And it's something that you usually did every single day, and you did constantly, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, but maybe I should check with somebody first. So just a show of hands in this room, have any of you experienced any of these at any time in your own personal life? Right? And I love everybody just like, yes, of course. So that's something when we're having conversations with people, we can normalize that. Like, we've all experienced something like this. And no matter what it is that the personal stressors are, that we can relate to another individual on a human level on what that's like, as well as be able to see that sometimes I'm not even aware of what I'm going through until I watch a TV show and somebody else, that other character, is having that happen. I'm like, oh shoot, I haven't processed that, right? So sometimes it just comes at you in a different way, and so to normalize that for ourselves, that we all experience secondary traumatic stress, that we all experience stressors in our lives. So now we're going to assess your self-care practice. So when we look at self-care, people think that it's bubble bath, it's getting your mani-pedis done, which we are doing as a team after this summit, just to let you know. We're going to take care of our physical self. So some physical ways that you can take care of yourself, because there's 5 here. First is get enough sleep and eat healthy foods. I'm looking at Wendy. Wendy can tell you all about that, and I'm sure she will tomorrow when she's up here as one of our panel speakers. Get away from stressful technology. So there's one thing that I've been doing, which my husband questions, like, how are you actually finding this relaxing and enjoyable? But for me, I don't like to look at my phone. I like to do logic puzzles before I go to bed. And for him, he's like, that hurts my brain. I'm like, no, it makes me feel like I'm in control and I can find answers to things. So finding what works for you in that physical self-care. Do some fun physical activity. Notice how I don't say exercise, because then people hear exercise and they feel like I have to get my heart rate up and I have to run, but you don't really. Yoga is great. Going for a walk is wonderful. I like to walk the dog with my kids, and that's just a good way. Again, walk and talk. I get to talk about lots of different things now. My oldest knows my trick. And I like to do vacations, right? Just doing something different, even if it's a staycation. Now we look at psychological self-care. Let's look at doing something new. And it could be something as simple as driving a different way home. Because there's so many times where I start to drive one of my kids to school and I end up going the wrong way because I thought the other kid was in the car, but it's just that automatic thing that your body does. So if you can take a different route and just observe some of the cool houses, or maybe there's a new little place that you didn't know about, that helps to alleviate some of that I'm just doing something consistently, breaks things up for you. You can also notice your inner experiences, so your dreams, your thoughts, your feelings. You can talk with a therapist, you can join a support group. There's something so wonderful and magical about entering into a space where other people just understand what you're going through. And then noticing those inner dreams. I want to go back to that. When I was working at a high school, I came in after a very beloved theater teacher had left. So you can imagine, as I'm coming in, as their new theater teacher, they absolutely hated me because I was not their original teacher that they loved and adored. So I remember having a dream as we were getting ready for our show, and it was Tech Week, and I dreamt about driving a bus. And it wasn't that I was just driving a bus. I had the entire cast and crew in my bus, and there were no roads. And I just remember I had a giant bus, and I was just literally driving over houses. The kids in the back were screaming and yelling, and I'm telling them to be quiet. It was just a whole cluster. And that was my dream. And I was like, maybe I'm a little stressed out about this new position. So thinking about what those dreams are trying to tell you, or at least helping you to process, can be really helpful. Next is spiritual self-care. So even just expressing gratitude, and that can be through meditation or prayer, celebrating those milestones, and it can be something very simple, and celebrating them too, because there are many times where I just get through the day and I was like, oh, I checked up all the boxes on my to-do list, or maybe I got the 2 that I really wanted to, and I celebrate by calling my mom, or I go get myself a little coffee. Really just that's how I celebrate everything, is I go get coffee. And there's many ways that you can do like little small things to celebrate the things that you're doing. There was a friend of my partner's that he every morning had a to-do list, and it started with wake up. And so when he woke up, he could check that off the list and go, I have accomplished something today. And sometimes that's what we need, just the one thing that we know we can check off. And then also listen to music and sing. I love doing that. Just anytime you're feeling extra stress, just releasing vocally can be really helpful. And then emotional self-care, allowing yourself, like my mom even said, to cry and sometimes scream and just let it out. Find things that make you laugh. I appreciate my oldest daughter. She'll introduce me to some stand-up comedians. I'm like, what is this? And first of all, you're 13. Why are you watching this? But also then her and I are sitting next to each other just laughing on the floor. So finding things that make you laugh. And then connecting with loved ones. So reaching out, calling them, send them a little text message, hey, love you. And then also allow time for yourself, which is what we're doing for our actors right now. They are taking that break. And then there's also workplace or professional self-care. This is something that like people are like, that what? You can take care of yourself in that way? Yes. So you can get support from colleagues. If you have a really understanding manager or boss, please reach out to them. You can also negotiate your needs, which is why that workplace wellness thing, the worksheet that we have organizations use, is to let them know on onboarding, when you're bringing a new person in, to say, hey, this is what can be really helpful for me, and it's a normalized conversation then. And then also, like you're doing today, pursue regular learning and professional development. So now is the time where you're going to talk amongst your table again about the different ways that you can take care of yourself. And what's wonderful in this experience where you're sharing with one another, you may hear from somebody else something that you're like, oh, I'm gonna write that down too. So you have your little handy notebooks that you've got in your swag bag, so you can use those and write them down. Because it's one thing to talk about it and say, I'm going to do that. It's another thing to write it down for yourself, to be purposeful, so you can be more mindful of it. So I'm going to give you some time to talk amongst your table about the different ways that you can practice self-care.